Hey guys, and welcome back to another video. Today we're going to be taking a look at a plus 20 Underrot on the 10.1 PTR that me and some friends did that we managed to finish in time. So this is a plus one. As you can see, it looks kind of weird sitting here in the keystone holder thing because we have tyrannical and fortified and nothing else. That's just one of the quirks of the PTR. You can choose what affixes you want to have on the key. You can also choose what key it is. You can choose basically everything about your keystone so that you can decide what you want to test. We were only super interested in how the trash feels on a 20 fortified and how the bosses feel on a 20 tyrannical. So we weren't really worried about like, oh, can we do this dungeon if we have volcanic going? Can we do this dungeon if we have quaking going? We weren't really worried about that kind of thing. Those are things that we'll just have to play around in the future, right? Not really things that we care about testing. So something I'll mention right off the bat, we have a blood DK as our tank. This is a really, really good blood DK dungeon. Oh, another thing that I'll mention. So first off, I trolled by just trying to walk past those guys. You can't just do that. You can fade and walk past them, I'm pretty sure, but you can't just get into their aggro range and not expect them to pull. And then also we need to keep an eye out on this pack that's coming up here. I'm pretty sure we do pull these guys as well on accident. These barbed spears hurt pretty bad. This dark reconstitution needs to be kicked or else it gets out a big heal. You can psychic scream like me and the other priest did just there to get rid of it. And these blood matrons, they'll run and do a savage cleave. If you get hit by that cleave, you get this dot on you and it does a lot of damage. He just died from it, right? So you need to make sure that doesn't go off. This is the gift of Gahoon that went off on that guy that I just dispelled. I know there's a lot going on. Sorry that it's not I'm not super explaining everything yet, but in the future I will, as this dungeon, becomes live or we do more of it. Or something that you could do potentially is go back on my YouTube channel. I do have videos of me playing Shadow Priest back when this was current content, right? So I explained the mechanics more there. And I mean, I will explain a lot of mechanics in this video. It's not like I'm intentionally trying not to, but there's just a lot going on, and I don't want to pause this one because it'll turn into another 45-minute video like the last one. So, yeah, as you could see, that dash from the matron is... Well, so first off, the other thing I'll say is I mess around a little bit with my add-ons here because I'm getting weird frame rate issues in this dungeon. Hopefully that's something that they change, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't an add-on problem. So I had just enabled method raid tools for this dungeon so that I could have these markers, but I ended up not using it, and I ended up disabling it, I'm pretty sure. So this Dark Omen, not good, something that you want to avoid, does a lot of damage. Gift of Gahoon, something that you need to what's it called? You need to purge that or kick it so that it doesn't go off. And then there are some other things that mask casts that do a lot of damage that you can kick. So now we're going down to Elder Leaxa. This is the first boss. This first boss is almost always a single target boss, although there are a couple times where one ad will spawn. You need to set up a kick rotation for the boss for these blood bolts. It's not necessary, but they do hurt. And then also, when the Sanguine Feast happens, you need to dodge this. It'll jump to a player and cast that. This Creeping Rot is going to be a frontal. It turns and points at people, and there's this flashing green thing. It's going to go off and go in a straight line. And then Blood Mirror will cast this Blood Mirror that makes a copy of the boss that also starts casting blood bolts. And as you can see, they hurt pretty bad. They're like smacking our tank for a lot of damage. And this mirror will also cast Creeping Rot. So you see one goes over there, one goes over here. That's because both of them were casting them. That's basically this whole boss. Dodge these feasts, dodge the frontals, kick the blood bolts. You win, GG. Dodge when the mirror comes out as well and mirrors all of the mechanics. So yeah, that's basically this whole boss. There's nothing really crazy to say about it. I'm just going to let this boss fight keep playing out. I probably will send... So there's only like 7 million HP left on this boss, and my CDs are about to come up in like 10 minutes, or 10 seconds, not 10 minutes, wow. I probably will send my CDs on this. I think that's the right choice. I accidentally click on the Paladin right there. I sent my what's it called? My mind games right there. I probably shouldn't have sent that. Probably should have waited until I was in my CDs, and then like now I should have sent it. But I did anyway. Cast a big Shadow Word Death as that thing dies. Cast another one. Make sure my dots stay up. So I'm going to use Shadow Crash to do that and not cast Vampiric Touch. That's the other thing I'll mention. There are talents now where Shadow Crash does not initially baseline. Shadow Crash won't put Vampiric Touch on things anymore. They made that a talent. So if you're using your Shadow Crash and you're like, why is Vampiric Touch not getting put on things? That's why. You probably will always play that talent in Mythic Plus, and you might even play it in single target situations as well. It might just be a talent that you always play. I haven't figured that out yet. Right here, we're marking these 2 Lashers because they have a lot of casts that are very dangerous. But the Shadow Crash thing, yeah, so it is more damage to use your Shadow Crash to re-up your dots than just to press 2 Vampiric Touches, which should make sense because, you know, Shadow Crash hits and does damage, whereas Vampiric Touch doesn't do any damage immediately. Shadow Word Pain does do initial damage, but Vampiric Touch does not. So, yeah, in these packs, these Living Rots are basically free count. You don't have to kick pretty much anything that they do. They do these green circles that leave that poop on the ground, and you need to avoid that. But they're pretty easy to avoid. These 3 Lashers, though... Oh, I paused. I wasn't going to pause. These Lashers will cast Decaying Mind. It's this debuff. It's a disease. Priests can dispel diseases if you take the right talent. I did not take the talent. Our other priest did, so he can dispel those. And I'm pretty sure that paladins can still dispel diseases as well. But yeah, you need to kick all of these Decaying Minds. You can stun them. You can fear them like this. It's very important to not let those go off, especially in a really high key, especially these maggots. If you'll keep an eye on this maggot, it'll cast Rotten Bile, and then it gets interrupted because our tank grips it. That's why a Blood Decay is very, very strong for the trash in this dungeon. They can handle a maggot pretty much by themselves. And back in BFA, he didn't handle it right there. Funny that I say it right before it goes off and kills somebody. But back in BFA, rogues were really, really strong. They were tuned really well, but they were also super strong because they could handle trash like this. There were certain mobs that needed like 5 stuns in a row and a bunch of kicks, and rogues were just the best for that. And DK is kind of filling that role right now in this dungeon by, kicking and grabbing and stunning those maggots every so often. They are very dangerous. If you let that Rotten Bile go off, as you saw, it will like 2-shot somebody. You'll see that these Blood Swarmers are fixating on a player and running to them. Oh, it's interesting that you keep the debuff after the Blood Swarmer's dead. I wonder if that's a bug. Probably. I don't know why you would need the debuff still. That's basically what determines the pulls that you do in this room. You want to do a pull that has 1 Blood Swarmer, maybe 1 Lasher, maybe 2 Lashers is fine. 3 Lashers at the same time is a little dangerous. Well, more than a little dangerous. I don't know how you're going to kick all of those, right? But 2 Lashers is pretty okay at the same time. 1 Blood Swarmer, though, because they fixate and they can't really be stopped very well. So you can stun them and you can CC them in different ways, but and that Sonic Screech, that will interrupt you and spell lock you, so don't be casting when that's going off. The fixate, if you get too far away, I think it's more than 7 yards. If you're more than 7 yards away from the Blood Swarmer, it'll jump to you again. That little dash thing that it does. We got another Lasher right here. Maybe we're going to wipe right here, actually. Yeah, it looks like we do. So I'll fast forward on the run back. I guess I'll wait for a second. When you release, you're back at the beginning of the dungeon. So that is unfortunate. Although, you can mount in the dungeon and you can run back. And you can Mind Suit this Matron to run past. So I'm going to fast forward just a little bit till we get back here. Something else I'll mention, there's a pat right here and there's a pack right here. You can walk between them if you're careful. Even when the pat is as close as it gets, there is still room for you to walk between them without using Fade. Any character can walk between them. You don't have to hide or anything. Yeah, right here is when I turn off Method Raid Tools and reload, hoping that it fixes my problem. I'll skip this load screen so you don't see how bad my PC is. Okay, so now we grab the Blood Swarmer. We're going to grab a bunch of these Living Rots because they don't matter. And then we'll grab the 1 Maggot as well, probably, because they're we have the Blood DK to take care of it. I'm trying to run away from the Swarmer, but I want to stay within, like I said, 7 yards of it or so. Although it hurts a lot. We do have a Paladin, and Paladins can cast Blessing of Protection on you, and you won't take any damage from the melees of those Swarmers. But it is a talent now, for Rhett at least, and he was not talented into it, so we just have to deal with it, right? Another thing I'll mention, if you watch the DPS meter over these dungeons, I never really peak super, super high in AoE like you can on live right now. On live right now in like Algathar's Academy and things, you can do a ton of damage on the very, very big poles like in front of the tree. But it feels like they've nerfed, without having Mind Seer, you can't do as much. You need to get all your dots out, right? You just kind of run out of globals to get your dots on like 20 different targets and also do a lot of damage. So what has kind of ended up happening is you put your dots on pretty much everything. Usually poles aren't that big, so you'll put your dots on like all of the mobs, and then you'll just go into your single target rotation, and you don't have any like massive, as long as if there were 100 things stacked for the current iteration of Shadow Priest, not the 10.1 iteration, if you had 100 things stacked, you would be doing more damage than if you had 50 things stacked on top of each other. In the 10.1 version of Shadow Priest, if you had 50 things stacked on top of each other, you would do very similar amounts of damage as if you had 100 things stacked on top of each other. Some of the ways that you would still be doing, you would still scale your damage, is Idol of Cthulhu. The Mind Seer tentacle from Idol of Cthulhu does do damage to more than 8 or 10 targets or whatever. It would do damage to all 100 targets, although it's reduced beyond 8 targets, I want to say. Maybe it's reduced beyond 5, something like that. These Blood Swarmers, Cyclone is really good for them. The Maggot gets its Rotten Bile off again and kills both me and the Druid, which is unfortunate. And you could see we went around that room counterclockwise and ended up over here. That was on purpose. You could go the other way, but we wanted to end up over here because this is where we're going to pull the boss from. So we have another Blood Swarmer up. We probably don't... Oh, we actually have more trash as well. So we're going to pull this trash back here instead of going out there to fight it. And the reason for that is because keeping this boss over by this rib cage, there are some mechanics that you can do that are some hidden tech that's not hidden because they did it all the time back in BFA. So anyway, a Decaying Mind just got off. It went on to our Paladin and got instantly dispelled, which is good. Good job, Sneaky. He's our healer. He's my guild master as well. I'm not popping my CDs here, although I think there's an argument to be made on a high enough fortified key that maybe you could send Dark Ascension and Mindbender on this pack before the boss, because it's going to take maybe a minute to finish killing it, especially if none of us are popping CDs. I'm pretty low here, actually, so maybe these two guys, if I was doing closer to their damage, maybe we'd be fine. I wonder how long this pull was, actually. I don't have any way to see on my current UI. Unfortunate. Another Decaying Mind gets off. As long as you can dispel those like instantly, it's not a huge deal, but they don't do like a ton of damage or anything. They just put you asleep for 30 seconds, which is a long time, right? So we're going to pull this boss, and we're going to pull it where I'm standing is where the boss should be, approximately, and this rib cage is where all of your ranged and everyone else should stand. So the boss is going to come out here. I'll talk as it happens, so let's wait for him to pull it. Hopefully it's soon. Yep, there he goes. He pulls it. I Shadow Crash, Mindbender, Dark Ascension, cast my Power Infusion, get into my single target rotation, and then you'll see he does Indigestion. When this Indigestion goes out, it's a frontal on the tank. You cannot dodge it easily. It can be dodged, but it's like, I think only Brewmaster Monks can dodge it. But it's very hard to dodge, so don't try to like turn it around or anything. If you're the tank, just let it go off on you. And then you need to step on all of these little worms that come out, these little grubs, because if you don't step on them, they'll grow up and turn into real deadly worms. And as you saw, every so often the boss will cast Charge. You want the charge to go into this rib cage, because then when it goes into the rib cage, all of these worms spawn pretty close to each other, and the boss doesn't go very far. You can keep your melee uptime, and then the boss will go into this tantrum mode, And this is when you need to say, I don't really care about doing DPS right here. Obviously, you do care a little bit because you need to kill the boss still. But what's way more important is to step on all of these little worms. And we happen to get all of them that time. So that's good. And then immediately after that tantrum finishes, you should start moving the boss back towards the ribcage. And you should have people trying to bait that charge back into the ribcage again, right? So like right now, we should not be standing out here in the open like this. It just makes it so that it's more likely for the boss to run really far away with the charges, and these indigestion worms get spread further out than if they were against a wall. So right here, we should have been back at the ribcage by now. We just didn't, right? So that's not good. And then we need to step on all these. I'm greeting a little bit to get some more casts off, because there is a fine line between doing the mechanics, focusing too hard on the mechanics, and doing no damage versus not doing the mechanics at all, but doing a lot of damage, and then these blood ticks spawn that come and kill you, right? So we got 4 blood ticks right here. They leave this bleed on people. See, it's like stacking even, which is not good. If you let too many of those ticks spawn, it can be really bad. See, it's like 5 stacks on the tank already, and it's going to be more. And with this indigestion, it can spiral out of control, right? The stacks fell off, which is good. We killed all the ticks, so it's not as big of a deal. And you can pad on those ticks a little bit. It's not really pad because they do need to die, but they don't need to spawn, so it is pad, right? If you let them spawn, then you can get a big halo. You can get, if you had Mind Seer still, you could get a big Mind Seer, but you can have a Shadow Crash do a decent amount of damage. Right here, I realized that I'm pretty far away from my healer and taking a lot of damage from that tantrum, so I just disperse. And then I can survive pretty much anything. So I should have went and stepped on that blood tick. I was just being lazy and forced my healer to go do it, and he couldn't get there in time, so we got another blood tick. Honestly, we played this very, very sloppily. But as I was saying in the freehold video, on the PTR, if you are going to do PTR keys with your friends or with randoms, because there are people on the PTR who will try and pug into keys, if you end up doing that, please be patient. Please understand that, like I said in the freehold video, a lot of people did not play in BFA, so they don't know the dungeons. I mean, this is just good advice for if you're ever doing a key with anyone, right? Be very patient. You should not flame people for not doing the mechanics correctly. You should, be a nice person, right? Right there, you can see we didn't step on pretty much any of the blood ticks. That was on purpose. We decided, let's just focus the boss and try and kill it in time. But it has some interesting side effects. Like right now, our tank has 8 stacks of this bleed and dies afterward because we didn't get rid of any of those. Then also on the PTR, you'll see that every so often when we kill a boss encounter, that thing pops up asking for feedback and bugs. I would also recommend that if you are going to play on the PTR and do Mythic Plus like this, take some time to give them feedback. That's the whole point of the PTR. I mean, it's fun to have the PTR just to get on and play with your friends before the content comes out to live, but you have a voice in how the game ends up being, right? The whole point of the PTR is to allow people to go out and play so that Blizzard can get data on how the different dungeons and how the different raid bosses and everything are actually feeling, right? So that they can tune them better. And when it gives you the opportunity like that, you should take that opportunity and say, either, it doesn't even have to be like bug reports only either. You could say like, hey, I thought this boss was tuned really, really well. I thought that it did appropriate damage for my item level. I didn't feel like we were struggling to keep up. Because there are definitely cases where the opposite is true, right? In Halls of Infusion right now on the PTR, on a plus 20 Tyrannical, the first boss does a lot of damage, and it's like pretty hard to heal through, and we were having troubles with it. So maybe that's some feedback that we would give in that issue reporter, is we would say, this first boss was very, very hard for us. It did a lot of damage. And then actual people at Blizzard, employees at Blizzard, look at those feedback reports. I'm hoping, at least. I don't know this for sure. But they look at those and they can make informed decisions off of that, right? So if 1,000 people went and played the dungeon, but only 20 of them said anything, and those 20 people were maybe people who are super, super good at the game and just want to give little bits of feedback, maybe those 20 people say, yeah, this boss fight was easy. But really, the other 980 people had a super hard time but didn't say anything, right? So anyway, that's my spiel about how you should actually be giving feedback on these things. These blood swarmers that are flying around out here on the edge, you need to be careful standing too close to this edge because you can get in their aggro range and they will come and join the fight. And you don't want that usually. They do give percent, so there are times where maybe you plan that, but be careful because you can body pull. I'm going to send my CDs here. You need to kick both of those Withering Curses. That's why we targeted, or why we marked both of these mobs, is so that we could call out who's kicking what. We don't have a ton of kicks, right? We've only got, we have a Shadow Priest and a Balanced Druid, so those are some long kicks. Stay away from the Spirit Drain Totem unless you want your Spirit drained. It will kill you in one shot. But yeah, you need to kick those Withering Curses. If you don't kick the Withering Curses, then while it's channeling, it'll give you a stacking debuff. And the stacking debuff, despite the name Withering Curse, it's a magic debuff, so you can mass dispel it. So if it does go out, it will target all 5 players, and every time it ticks, it'll make you do 10% less damage. So you need to mass dispel that. This is the first time that our tank has done this boss. He didn't do or maybe he didn't tank UNDERROT. I'm pretty sure he played in BFA, but I'm not sure. He at least didn't tank this boss, so this is his first time trying to point these shockwaves, because what you need to do, something that I'll talk about this. These mushrooms spawn around the circle. Upheaval goes on 2 people. It puts a circle on the ground that these like earth missiles come to and explode, and it gets rid of any mushrooms in the circle. And then when he casts this Festering Harvest, any mushroom that's still up will put a stacking debuff on every player. So if you didn't kill 5 mushrooms, you'd have 5 stacks of that debuff, and it goes on every single player, and it's likely that you will wipe and die, right? They are diseases, so if you have any disease dispellers, they can get rid of them on a certain player, or on multiple players if you have multiple, right? He'll cast that thing, which makes all these circles go through the balls go through the middle of the circle. You need to avoid those. They will also give you a stack of that mushroom debuff. And then the other thing I would say, like in this case, with this one mushroom out here, our tank should just walk into it and get the mushroom, because he actually got another shockwave. If he didn't have a shockwave there, he should just walk into it, get the 1 stack on himself. This Festering Harvest would go off, which does do a lot of damage to everybody, even though, yeah, I'm pretty good at dodging. This Festering Harvest goes off, and it does do a bit of damage, but the most important part is the debuff that it puts on people. So your options, when you have 1 left, are you could either let it go off and put the debuff on everybody, or you could have 1 person walk into it and soak it, focus heal that 1 person, and not take the debuff on every single player, right? Or even just dispel it off that 1 person. Right here we have 2 more packs, so he's going to go to this left one, I'm going to go to the right one. So this, honestly, the decision I should have made there is I should have positioned myself on that farther one beforehand, because then our melee could have run to the close one and then run back and not have to run as far. But I saw him running to that far one and decided that I would just go, and maybe actually those, it looked like I got hit by one of those. Maybe they're not actually doing damage. Interesting. They should, at least in BFA, they would apply that debuff to you and do a bunch of damage when you got hit by one, and you could take multiple stacks. So now we've got these grotesque horrors. There are some of these earlier on in the dungeon that I didn't really talk about. They'll just spam this Deathbolt cast. They can be stunned, they can be feared, they can be paralyzed, they can have all these things, right? So you just need to kick it every single time. If you don't kick it, it casts a like Deathbolt on all 5 people in the in the dungeon, and it does a decent amount of damage. It scales with Fortified, so obviously it'll do more damage on a higher key. Higher Fortified key, at least. Actually, a higher key of any. And now you've got this pack of skeletons, these reanimated guardians. This is a good spot to pop your cooldowns. These guys last a decent amount of time. They will cast this bone shield that needs to be kicked. All of them will cast it, and this Death Speaker will cast that Wicked Frenzy. That Wicked Frenzy needs to be stopped as well. If it doesn't get stopped like just now, it'll give it an attack speed bonus, I'm pretty sure. And that attack speed bonus does a lot of damage. Makes it so that your tank takes a lot of damage. So you need to stop that with like a stun or with a DK grip, which is why they're so good. But if the bone shields get off, you have five targets in there that you need to kick. If you can't kick them all and stop all of the bone shields, you can single target dispel them or mass dispel them. They're a magic buff. So right here, I'm going to fade and just walk past this. You can hug the right side and not have to pull any of these worms. The intended route, or the route that you'll see in leveling, is people will just run through the worms. But you can skip them, and they are pretty dangerous. So then we go into these faceless corruptors. You have to kill these guys. They're pretty easy, though. When this Abyssal Reach cast goes off, it'll put these tentacles on the ground, and these tentacles will swing in the direction that they snapshotted when they spawned. So if you watch, I'm right here. A Reach just went off. This tentacle spawned. It's always going to go this way. If you see, it hits that way, and then this one hits that way. Because when this Reach goes off, you'll see again. This one spawns, it's going to go to where I was standing right there. So if I stand far enough away, it's going to hit, and it's not going to hit me, right? Those maddening gazes, it'll turn and point. Like right now, it's kind of pointed at me. It'll turn and point, and this frontal will go out. If you get hit by that, it does a lot of damage, but it also, and more importantly, fears you. And if you get feared, you can start running up into those worms, and that's no good. This pull can go really, really badly. So it's good to tank it kind of up at the front like this, although you do need to worry. Once those guys are dead, this Guardian dude will come open this, and you'll get sucked to the last boss unless you stay kind of far away. So make sure that if you are, like, we're not done with trash, so we are going to do one worm. We need to make sure that nobody gets pulled down there. Now we're just going to do this one worm. I'm going to save my CDs, hopefully. I think it's not worth sending them right here because this worm doesn't have a ton of health. We're about to go do the last boss. We want to time it, so I need to do a lot of damage. But yeah, basically, same thing. Just kick the worm. Not too much to say. This is interesting. Void Torrent does like no insanity generation anymore. And it's weird. It can do a lot of damage. It feels like it hits like a truck still, which is nice. I had one Void Torrent, I think, that did 700k with only one crit. So if you get lucky and it crits a bunch, I think you could do probably 1 million damage with one Void Torrent, which is pretty crazy. And then this last boss, I think, is really, really fun. It's got some sweet mechanics, and I'll talk about them as we do it. So I'm going to Shadow Crash to get my dots out. I actually Vampiric Touched and then Shadow Crashed. I should have just Shadow Crashed initially. I'm still a bit in the habit of using Vampiric Touch. This is a bad expulsion. Every so often, the boss will cast that vile expulsion. What you want to do is you want to tank the boss around the edge of the room and choose a direction. Do you want to go clockwise or counterclockwise? Once you've decided that, you want the players to bait that vile expulsion. It is targeted at a player. You want to bait that vile expulsion away from the direction that you want to take the boss. So we are going counterclockwise, which means that the players need to all stand clockwise of the boss. And then this vile expulsion comes out. It goes back to where we came. We don't have to pull the boss very far to get it out of it. And then it's very similar to the fire boss in RLP, the second boss, I think, where you just go past the mechanic, bait back towards it, so that the stuff on the ground is where there already was stuff on the ground. And then you can see the boss's health is not going down. This boss is a little weird. It has a giant shield that just absorbs all the damage you deal to it. And then every third of its life, every time you like do enough damage, it'll chunk a third of its health bar and spawn those 2 bloody visages. And when those 2 bloody visages come out, there should be more coming here soon. It's when it hits 100 energy, actually. And the 100 energy is determined by how much damage you're dealing to the boss. So you can't just sit there and do no damage. When those bloody visages come out, you need to focus them down because killing them is what kills the boss. So we get another vile expulsion here. I have a halo go out that hits some of these rotting spores. That's something else I'll mention. Our Boomkin is getting a lot of damage on those rotting spores because he's just starfalling and killing them all. If you don't have a Boomkin, then these spores are going to come in and get closer to the boss. And if they hit the boss, then the boss gets... I think what happens when they hit the boss is everyone gets a stack of this thing right here, which is not good. So yeah, as you can see, as we kill, it's down to 49%. When we kill this, it goes down to 32. the Titan Keeper guy will come over and channel on those bloody visages. But now that we're down, oh, that's the other thing I'll say. This Cleansing Light, you have this stacking disease debuff or magic debuff, and that Cleansing Light will get rid of it on anyone who's in it. So you want to make sure that the whole team is stacked and in it. Right here, we bait this Vile Explosion poorly in the direction we want to go. So now we're going to kind of do an audible and start baiting it towards the outside of the room so that this will eventually go away. These puddles don't last forever, and you can clear them with Cleansing Light. So if you take that Cleansing Light and you run out here into the middle of all these puddles, it will get rid of them. Right now, we're just going to have to go through it, so we're all going to get a stack as we go through. Cleansing Light is on me, so I'm going to stand over here. We get the 2 last bloody visages, and then this is how you end the key. The boss is still alive and is still doing mechanics, but you don't need to hit it anymore. You just need to hit these 2 bloody visages, and they'll kill the boss. So, as you can see, we timed it with 1:20 left. I think this dungeon is really well tuned, at least for the item level that we are on the PTR currently. I don't think they need to change much about this dungeon, although there are a couple like trash mobs that do way too much damage and things. But all in all, glad that the UNDERROT is coming back. I think it's going to be a really fun dungeon. So that's going to be the end of this video. If you liked the video, make sure you click the like button. If you really liked it, feel free to subscribe. Maybe join my Discord server down in the description below. Keep an eye out for future PTR videos, and I will see you guys in the next video. Peace!